Welcome to our mental health podcast called Minded, where we are spiritually minded in our discussions, community minded in mission, and like minded in the hope that we have in Christ. I am super excited that you guys chose to join us again this week, this month. Thank you for continuing to come back and join us on our talks about mental health with a spiritual foundation. And today, you guys are in for a treat. We have a special guest with us today, and we're going to be delving into a topic that many of us are familiar with and have been affected by, or know someone that has been affected by it, and that is the topic of anxiety. As always, again, this is just an overview. This is not to replace your therapist or to replace therapy. This is just something to give you some additional tools, additional information, additional resources, and to just put a face to anxiety, right? Because we are not our diagnoses. We are not our mental health issue, our mental health challenge. We're individuals. We're people that happen to maybe deal with anxiety or depression or whatever it is. And so today, our topic again is on anxiety. And my special guest is Kelsey.
Hi.
Thank
I'm so
you.
happy to be here.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for asking me to be here. I am honored. I am honored. Seriously.
Okay,
So thankful.
so Kelsey, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, my name is Kelsey. I am 25. We'll start with that. I'm
Okay.
25 and I got married a year ago. I live in Maryland.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's still I'm still a newlywed. Maybe not. I don't really know.
No, you are.
I
You
am.
are.
I'm
Yes, you
soaking
are.
it in. I'm
Yes.
taking it in.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, so I got married about a year ago. Me and my husband live here in Salisbury. And we both work at the church. He's the campus pastor of Bethany campus. So super cool. And I work here on the media team. So I just love Emmanuel so much. Seriously, I'm just so thankful to be here, and it has changed my life. The Lord has changed my life here, and I'm just so thankful to be here. So,
And
yeah.
thank you again for agreeing to be here because I
Yeah.
know it takes a lot of courage
Mhm.
to talk about maybe some of your innermost thoughts or some of
Yeah.
your struggles and to know that thousands of people could be listening to
Yeah.
your testimony. And that takes a lot of courage. So,
Yeah.
again, thank you, thank you, thank
Yeah,
you.
of course. And honestly, I just feel so just honored to share what the Lord has done in my life. So I'm just so blessed. And so I just want to share that with other people
Okay.
because even though it was a dark time in my life and, anxiety was a big part of my life,
Okay.
it's gotten me to different places and the Lord has got me out of it. So
Okay.
just so thankful. So
And
thankful.
and I'm so glad and I can hear the excitement in your voice and I can see the gratitude
Yeah.
just oozing out of your
Yeah.
pores.
Yeah.
So let's start with, when do you first remember struggling with anxiety?
So I would say in high school, I struggled a little bit with anxiety, but I didn't really know it was anxiety. I knew that every morning I would wake up and my stomach would hurt. I wouldn't be able to eat. I remember my parents, they would make me breakfast. They would make me, really good food, a little breakfast sandwich to take to school. And I could never eat it because my stomach was just hurting. And that was every morning. And come to find out years later that it was anxiety because when I was really like in the depth of my anxiety, it was always in the morning. The morning was like the height of my anxiety. So I look back and I'm like, oh, I thought that I was just like nervous or something, but no, I was definitely dealing with some anxiety in the morning, surrounding like going to school and stuff. But it never turned into like a diagnosis
Okay.
where I was like, "Oh, this is definitely anxiety."
Okay.
And even to the point where, my sister, she struggled with anxiety, and I remember her calling me one time and she was like, "Hey, like I'm really having a lot of anxiety right now." And I'm like, "About what? Like, what are you anxious about?"
Mhm.
And so I always, go back to that memory of I just didn't know what anxiety was. She understood what anxiety was, but I just had never understood what it was
Okay.
until later when I was in college. That's when my anxiety really started to develop into a disorder. So,
Okay. And so but you remember your first memory of it was in
Mhm.
high school
Yeah. Yep.
and in the morning getting ready
Yes.
for school, or even
Yeah.
before leaving the house with
Yep.
breakfast and all that. So I guess
Exactly.
we should back up and just talk a little bit about just the give the audience a working definition of anxiety. And we're going to get into a little bit
Okay.
more some of the specific things a little bit
Yeah.
later. But and as a therapist, again, I've
Mhm.
worked with individuals with anxiety,
Yeah. It's all
and
different.
it's all different. And
Yeah.
first, I want to preface it by saying, on some level, we all have, or all will, or
Mhm.
all have dealt with anxiety,
Yeah.
right? So,
Definitely.
anxiety is this worry, fear,
Yeah.
uneasiness,
Yep.
feeling of dread or
Mhm.
apprehension.
Yeah.
And you talked a little bit about sometimes those symptoms manifest itself in a physical
Yes.
way, such as heart
Definitely.
palpitations,
Yeah.
trembling hands, cold, sweaty
Mhm.
palms, um, irritable bowel syndrome, diarrhea, like a host of physical
Yeah.
symptoms. But there's also another component, and that's those thoughts that
Mhm.
accompany them,
Yes.
like this
For sure.
dread
Yep.
that something bad is going to happen,
Yeah, and I definitely
or
had that. I
right, or
definitely had that.
something negative is going to
Yeah.
happen, or um, you can't do this because you're afraid this may happen, or you
Mhm.
might get this response from people.
Yeah.
And basically, what happens is when it begins to become a disorder is when that worry, that apprehension, that anxiety is persistent
Mhm.
and begins to impact
Yeah.
other areas of your life. And that worry that you have is really disproportionate
Yes.
to the actual reality of what's going on in
Mhm.
your life. So I just wanted to kind of put that out
Yeah.
there for some of the listeners, and some of the physical symptoms too. So I got some cheat notes because there's a whole host of symptoms,
Yeah,
and
for
it doesn't
sure.
mean you have to have every single one of
No,
them, right?
definitely not. Yeah.
So we mentioned some of the heart palpitations or chest
Mhm.
pains, numbness,
Yeah.
hot flashes, chills.
Mhm.
It's just so many things.
Yeah.
And so when we come to a diagnosis, that's because now, because again, we all experience anxiety
Mhm.
at some point, but when it becomes this persistent, it starts to interfere with different aspects of your life, like your
Yeah.
job, your
Yep.
relationships, your social interactions. Then we begin looking at
Yeah.
the diagnostic side of it.
Yeah, exactly.
And
And go ahead.
no, and so I was going to talk specifically about where your journey went with that
Yeah.
diagnosis. But I wanted to give everyone just a little bit of background on just the number of anxiety disorders. And we're just going to
Yeah.
focus on one
Okay.
today.
Yep.
And so, again, I've got my handy dandy note
Yeah,
cards
you
because there's so
do.
much
Yeah,
information.
you do. I love it.
So, according to the Diagnostic Statistical Manual, again, the mental health Bible, so to say, there are 11 anxiety disorders. And I'm just going to name them. And some of them you probably have heard of. And then we're going to focus on the one: separation anxiety, selective mutism, specific phobias, of which there are about 5 categories, such as the fear of animals, for example, social anxiety disorder, panic disorder, agoraphobia, substance or medication induced anxiety disorder due to a medical condition, other specified anxiety disorder, or unspecified anxiety disorder. And those last two come about when a person doesn't meet the criteria for one of the specific ones, but
Okay.
yet there's something going on.
Yeah.
And then the one that we're going to talk about today is generalized anxiety disorder,
That's
or
it.
GAD for short,
Yeah.
where there's this persistent, constant worry about just everyday challenges,
Yeah.
but it's out of proportion to the actual perceived threat or
Mhm.
situation that the person's going through. And
Yeah.
what I found interesting is, of those 11 diagnostic disorders, anxiety disorders, about 7.3% of individuals globally live with at least one of those.
Mm.
And so tell us a little bit about the diagnosis that you came about to have.
So first, I do love that you touched on the difference between having anxiety and having anxious thoughts, because of course we're all going to have anxious thoughts,
Mhm.
but the difference between that and then having an actual anxiety disorder, because I think that is really important, because everyone experiences anxiety, um and I can talk about this later, but for something that really stuck with me was, um this is a little side tangent, but
Uh-huh.
when preachers and pastors would talk about, This is how you deal with your anxiety. This is how you deal with anxiety. And I'm like, but this isn't healing me, you know? And they were
Hmm.
talking about, the anxious thoughts that they're having and stuff like that. And so anyway, just a side tangent, that's my personal,
Okay. And we'll talk more about
yeah,
that, I'm
for
sure.
sure.
Yeah.
But the question was,
Yeah.
what is my experience with the diagnoses and
Hmm.
stuff like
Yeah.
that?
Tell us the
Okay.
diagnosis. 'Cause I just listed about 11. What
Yes.
was the
So
diagnosis that you were given?
yeah, so I would say kind of off that, when I was in high school, I would say I was having anxious thoughts, in the
Hmm.
morning, I don't want to go to school. I'm waking up, I'm feeling sick. And I'm having this feeling of like, oh, something doesn't feel right, but not sure what it is.
Hmm.
I'm safe, but something doesn't feel right. I feel like something bad's going to happen. Um, and then into college, this is when I really started to experience anxiety. And generalized anxiety disorder is something that I was diagnosed with.
Okay.
And so I was diagnosed with this because of all the symptoms that I was having and how it impacted my everyday life. Um, I wasn't able to go to work. And if I was able to go to work, I had to leave because I was having panic attacks.
Okay.
And it was affecting my relationships, my work life, my everyday life. It was affecting my weight. Like I had, lost, oh goodness, like maybe 20 pounds in less than a month, 3 weeks or something horrendous.
Okay.
So,
How did it affect your relationships? If I could just
yeah,
pause you
for
there.
sure. So I would say it affected my relationships because I wasn't able to overflow into other people's lives. I wasn't
Okay.
able to check in on my friends. I
Okay.
wasn't able to, even really hang out with some of my friends because I was so anxious. I couldn't go to a coffee shop and just sit and have coffee with one of my friends. And in my romantic relationship, it was affecting me and my boyfriend, now husband. Love that. He stuck with me through it all,
Okay.
but it affected my relationship with him because I felt this guilt of, oh my gosh, if I really show him how horrible I'm doing, I know it's going to bring him to tears, and and it did, and
Okay.
it hurt me to know that I was like hurting him because I was
Okay.
hurting. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it
Yeah.
was like this cycle. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm really not doing well, and if I tell you I'm not doing well, then you're gonna be so upset because you wanna help, but you can't, and, like, so it was
Mhm.
that vicious cycle of going round and round and feeling guilty for feeling, you know,
Mhm.
for feeling so bad and
Right.
for having all these panic attacks and for it affecting my life and for it to affect my job and all this stuff, so,
So, Kelsey,
yeah.
when you were, say, at a coffee shop with your friends
Mhm.
and you just couldn't sit through it, what were some of the things that you were going through, whether it be a physical
Mhm.
symptom or whether it was an intrusive thought? Like, walk
Yeah.
us through what that was like for you.
I would, first of all, like to say that my, anxiety was really physical for me. So
Okay.
when I was experiencing any type of anxiety, it bubbled up in a physical way. So I would run to the bathroom, I would be vomiting. I would be like I would have to go home and I would be trembling in bed, literally
Okay.
curled up in a ball, like actually trembling. Um I would be obviously like super hot and sweaty. I would,
Mhm.
have just this dizziness. I was and that would just lead me to all of these other things, but
Okay.
I would say the vomiting and
Okay.
because that was, like, an everyday thing, unfortunately, and that's why I had lost weight and,
Okay.
I couldn't eat, and if I did, I was, you know, not really holding it down,
Okay.
um, but yeah, so my anxiety was very physical, so if I had an anxious thought, like, and it could be something that in the coffee shop, like, something totally random, like, what if a bad guy comes in here
Mm.
and, like, something bad happens if he has a weapon and then we're all hostages. It's like all these little things that there's no reason for me to think that,
So
but
your mind would create these
yes, I would go
scenarios,
to
a beginning, middle, and
drastic.
an end.
Yep. But it would be like in a split second. It would just be like,
Mhm.
what if bad guy comes in here? And then instantly I'm like, I need to go to the bathroom. I'm gonna throw up. So
Mhm.
it was very irrational fears that I was having. And it was all surrounding I wasn't in control.
Okay.
So, and
Okay.
that's something that I later found out was like the root of all of my anxiety or most of my anxiety, and my panic attacks. Panic
Okay.
attacks. I don't know why I said it like that.
I know
My
you
panic attacks.
I
Yeah.
know you said that, you kind of began to notice these things in high school
Hmm.
and then again in college. Was there a specific event or something that you, and again, you don't have to,
Yeah.
give any details, whatever you
Mhm.
choose to say, you can say.
Yeah.
Was there any specific things that you now, looking back, can trace back to, this was
Yeah.
maybe part of the root of the anxiety? Because anxiety can be caused by many different things.
Mhm.
It can be environmental, it can be situational, it can be medical, it
Yep.
can be drug induced, alcohol induced, could be a genetic predisposition. There's so many different things
Yeah.
that can trigger
Yeah.
anxiety.
Definitely. So a little bit about my past and which leads into like my testimony
Mm-hmm.
is
Mm-hmm.
in high school I was searching every which way for something to fill the void that I was having. Um, but in that searching, I experienced a lot of trauma and especially trauma around men
Okay.
and how they treated me and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so that kind of was suppressed for a while. And
Mm.
then when I got to college, I was dating a different guy. And I think that, so I broke up with him and we had decided to go our separate ways. Um, and I think that because of that, that was the turning point for me, and that's, like, literally the moment that I did that, I experienced this overwhelming sense of anxiety that I just hurt someone.
Okay.
I just hurt someone and, someone who I had loved and someone who I had cared about, and I just hurt someone so
Mm-hmm.
bad,
Mm-hmm.
and this guilt just overcame me because I was a people pleaser. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I didn't want to make anyone feel bad and and then my parents were like obviously upset about this because they had loved him
Mm-hmm.
and so it was this guilt that I had that first I had hurt someone that I cared about. Second, that I just turned his world upside down, that I had turned my world upside down, and now I don't know what to do with this guilt of hurting someone because I feel so bad that I have just, have just hurt someone by deciding to do this. Um, and, I didn't do anything necessarily wrong in the breakup, but, I was looking back on how I had treated him and, I had dealt with a lot of anger and, that kind of bubbled into our relationship. And
Okay.
I was like, oh my gosh, I had treated him so poorly. Like, why did I treat him so poorly? And all of these thoughts and all
Okay.
of these things that I had experienced and all those trauma things and
Mm-hmm.
traumatic things that I had experienced in high school, it all just came out
This
during
kind of
this breakup.
snowballed.
Yep. It literally, when this breakup happened, it was like, okay, my body was like, okay, I'm going to throw up literally all of these traumas that you have experienced and we're laying them all out on the table. Trauma
Okay.
around men, trauma around people who are drinking, and trauma around all of the things. So,
Okay.
that was a lot,
Okay.
but yeah, so I would say that was the turning point for me. When my anxiety really snowballed, like you said.
Is that
So,
what led to the diagnosis of
mhm,
GAD, the generalized
yep,
anxiety disorder?
yes. So it wasn't for another year until I decided to ask for help. So
Okay.
I had dealt with that for about a year, and then I eventually was at my wit's end. I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I couldn't fight anymore. And I remember looking at, a year later, I was with my now husband, and I remember looking at him and I was like, I can't fight anymore. I can't fight to go to work. I can't fight to go to hang out with my friends. I can't fight for my peace. I can't fight anymore at
You were
all.
just tired,
I
it
was
sounds like. Your
tired.
body was tired. Your
I
mind was
was
tired.
yes. And I was just fighting for peace. I was just
Okay.
fighting for peace. And I just wanted to have some peace in my heart that I knew that Jesus could give me. And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, Jesus, why are you not giving me this peace? Like you say that you're gonna give me this peace and I'm not having it. Like, where is
Mm-hmm.
it? And so that's when I decided, I said, Lord, I'm gonna go to the doctor and I'm gonna get some medication or something. And I need them to tell me what's wrong with me because there's
Okay.
something wrong.
So
And so,
basically, that's what led to the
yes.
diagnosis. You kind of came
Mm-hmm.
to your wits' end
Mm-hmm.
of trying to do. How did you initially, before you went to see the doctor, how were you trying to manage this on your own?
I would isolate.
Okay.
I would go be by myself. I would go to sleep because I knew if I was asleep, can't be anxious.
Okay.
If I'm asleep, then and that kind of rolled into depression. I'm in
Mm-hmm.
bed all the time. I'm sleeping all the time. I'm taking like 5-hour naps after school and then waking up and or after class, college,
Mm-hmm.
and waking up and then eating dinner and going back to sleep for another 10 hours, you know? So it
Mm-hmm.
was definitely really unhealthy. I didn't know how to manage it. So I
Okay.
would isolate. I would isolate
Okay.
myself because I didn't want to bring anyone down. And
Okay.
that's the only way I knew how to do it was to go to sleep,
Yeah.
literally.
And that's
So
often what we do. We do
yeah.
what we know to do.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Um, or maybe, what we've seen other people do, or sometimes it's just what we know to do in the moment,
Mm-hmm.
because it sounds like, just hearing you talk about that, that there
Yeah.
was this physical draining,
Yes.
emotional draining, emotional
Yeah.
weariness and tiredness, that you kind of came to the end of your rope, so to say.
Yeah.
And so that sounds like that's what prompted you to seek professional help.
Mm-hmm.
And was it difficult for you to admit you needed professional help? And if so, why?
I would say initially, like I said, it was a year until I decided, I need
Okay.
help. A year of panic attacks and like I don't really know what's going on and I can't keep any food down and I'm getting sick when I have these
Mm-hmm.
bad thoughts and I didn't really know and I would talk to my sister and she would say, like you're experiencing anxiety. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is
Mm-hmm.
anxiety. So I was like, okay, I have a name for it. Now what do I
Okay.
do? And like I said, it was about a year later and at that point, that's when I was pretty much at my wit's end and I was like, you know what? I need help. And I was like, Lord, I know that I can't do this on my own. You have given me resources. You have given me
Mm-hmm.
people around me who want to help. You have given
Mm-hmm.
me professionals who want to help and who can help. Why am I not taking them up on it? Like, so I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the doctor. And I had explained all of my symptoms. And I think I initially went to like a primary care doctor.
Okay.
Um, and then they told me, they said, okay, like this is, I had to do like assessments and stuff like that. I believe this was about 5 years ago.
Okay.
And they had told me this is, generalized anxiety disorder. And they asked me if I wanted to go on medication. And initially I was so against it, but I was like,
Mhm.
you know what? Let me have the option. So I'll take the medication and then I'll just, kind of sit it on my
Mhm.
desk and then we'll figure out if I can take it. So
Okay.
I think initially it was really difficult for me because I almost thought that people would be like, why do you need that? What is wrong with you? And so I remember leaving the doctor's office just so upset, just crying and crying and
Mhm.
crying and crying. And I called my mom and I was so scared to tell her for
Mhm.
no reason. She's so loving and so
Right.
kind. And I was so scared to tell her, like, Mom, they told me I need to go on medicine. And I remember I told her, and I thought she was going to be like, well, why do you need to go on medicine? This is just anxiety.
Mhm.
Um, and she was like, "Okay, that's okay, Kels. Like, this is gonna help you." And I was like, "Wait, like you're not mad at me?" I don't know why I thought that she would be mad at me. I just thought
Mhm.
that, that there was this shame that I was
Mm.
kind of projecting on people. I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
I feel shameful, so I'm gonna,
Other people must feel the
they
same
they
way.
must feel, that they're ashamed of me because I had to go on medication." Um,
Okay.
and so then I started taking it, kind of went through just this process of finding out what was working for me, what wasn't, dosages, all that fun stuff.
So
So I
you
finally
had to stick
mhm,
to it a little bit. It wasn't
yeah,
like the first
no,
medicine or the
nope,
first dosage. It was
no.
like the silver bullet.
Yeah, they told me they were like, with any medication, it's gonna take
Mhm.
some time. And
Mhm.
I think they told me give it a few months, and then so I would find out, a few months later that it wasn't really working, try something else. And I think it was maybe 2 or 3 medications I tried before I found the right one for me,
Okay.
um, that kinda worked for my body and, my mind and stuff
Mhm.
like that,
Mhm.
and I have been on it ever since. Different dosages at different times in my life.
Okay. So why don't you share a little bit about what your journey has been with the therapy added to the medication management? At what point did you seek the therapy? 'Cause it sounded like you sought the medication first through your primary. At
Yeah.
what point was therapy added to that?
Yeah. So I think I was a little bit stubborn in my ways. I was like,
Okay.
well, what is talking about this gonna do? What am I gonna gain from talking about
Mm-hmm.
why I'm anxious when I don't even know why I'm anxious? So what are they gonna do? They're gonna ask me why I'm anxious, and I'm gonna say
Uh-huh.
I don't know, and that's it. So that's why I went
Right.
kind of the
Right.
medical route. Um, but they did say, there's definitely a like when you add in therapy with medication, like It's usually not one or the other that, or
Okay.
sometimes it is one or the other, but they said that there's a better chance of you feeling better if you do both together. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, let's find me a therapist. Let's do it. So I found a therapist. Again, had to kind of do a trial and error period, and
Okay.
there were some that didn't kind of sit right with me. Maybe had different views on things. Um, but yeah, so it did take me a little bit to find a therapist that I liked. Yeah, and then I found one, stuck with her, and she's the
Okay.
best.
Now, obviously, you're very, open that you are a believer, you're a Christian.
Mhm.
Talk a little bit about the stigma associated with a Christian taking, psych meds and doing therapy, and maybe what some of the stigmas that you had to get beyond for yourself.
So, first of all, I would talk to other believers and um they would ask me, "Well, how's your prayer life? How's your walk with the Lord? Are you repenting? Is there some sort of sin that you're dealing with that you're not repenting of or something?"
Hmm.
And I was like, "No, like my relationship with the Lord is actually really good. Like, I'm relying on Him because I need to.
You
Like,
need
I
to,
need Him.
right?
And so I would say there's a stigma in Christianity about taking medication because in my head, when I took medication, I was like, okay, God, I don't need you. I need medication.
Hmm.
But in reality, the Lord was using medication to heal
Hmm.
me, and the Lord was just showing me that it's okay to use medication to help you. Like I was talking about it the other day with someone, and if you had blood pressure issues or heart issues, or
Right. Or
you broke
diabetes,
your
or
yeah you broke your wrist and like you needed a cast, like you need whatever it is, diabetes, and it's like
hmm
you would go to the doctor and get medication and it would be okay. And so I think once I realized that, that medication is not like anti-Christian or like you're
hmm
not a good enough Christian if you're taking medication, then I realized that okay, this is good. Like I'm really good. This is
yeah,
okay. But
yeah.
it definitely at first it made me feel crazy. I was like, okay, I feel crazy. I have to take medication and I
Hmm.
have to go to a psychiatrist, and I don't know, but that word is really scary, and like
I
this
think
is.
it's a stereotype
Yes, there is
that
such a stereotype, and it's
if you go to
sad.
therapy or if you see a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
there's a stereotype that, oh, that's only for crazy people or people that are a little
Yes.
off or people are a little,
Yes.
cocoa for Cocoa Puffs or cuckoo for Cocoa
Literally.
Puffs. I think is how you say
Yes.
it.
Yep.
And that's part of what we want to do here in the
Yeah.
podcast is really normalize
Mhm.
things like, yes, I'm a Christian and I go to therapy, or yes,
Yes.
I'm a Christian
Yeah.
and I take, anti anxiety
Yeah.
medication.
Mhm.
Because again, the diagnosis, generalized anxiety disorder, or if it's social
Yeah.
anxiety disorder, whatever the diagnosis is, as a
Yeah.
believer, even as a non believer, that's not your identity.
It's
That's not
not.
who you are as
Exactly.
a young man or a young
Mhm.
woman or as a teenage girl or a teenage boy.
Yeah.
It's just a diagnosis that you have based on a set of symptoms
Yeah.
that are present in your life, but it's not your identity. It's not
It's not.
who you are
Yep.
at the core.
Exactly. And honestly, on that, once I started saying, I do not have anxiety, I deal with anxiety. Or maybe that's not the right way I'm saying it. Oh, I would say I'm an anxious person. Sorry, I'm just an
Mhm.
anxious person. But that's me almost like claiming it as mine. And I was
Mm.
like, you know what? This isn't me. I am not anxious. Like anxiety doesn't equal me. I am dealing with anxiety.
Mhm.
So I kind of try to change my language over it because I was like,
Yeah.
my brain's listening to me. Like
Yeah.
maybe something will catch on.
Yeah.
But there's definitely a stigma around um, medication and mental health and Christianity. But I do believe that, like, as time goes on, I do believe that we're kind of getting better at it, at least like in my sphere of people.
Mhm.
I do feel more comfortable talking about it with people. And I do hear more people talking about it. Like, just the fact that this podcast is available, I feel like 10 years ago or 20 years ago, it would be like, no. So
Right.
I think that's awesome that we're starting to talk about it. We're starting to talk about real issues so people don't feel alone, because that is like the worst thing that I could possibly think of is someone dealing with something alone. So,
yeah, because they feel like
mhm.
they're going to be shamed. And
Yep.
unfortunately, sometimes other believers do shame
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
believers, and
Unknowingly. Yeah.
unknowingly or purposefully, it's almost where they feel like, you a Christian? What's your Christian report card grade? Are you an
Mhm.
A+ Christian? Are you a
Yep.
B+
Are
Christian? Are
you
you a C
praying?
minus?
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's like
Exactly.
you're grading this level of Christianity
Yeah.
based on the things I'm going through in my life or I'm not
Mhm.
going through,
Yep.
make me a better Christian, and that's just so not even biblical. Like, I'm a
It's
better
not.
Christian because I don't take depression medicine
Exactly.
or
It's
anxiety
not.
medicine. That's
Yeah.
not.
And for me, it's like I believe that I'm me. I'm a better Christian than I was when I wasn't taking medication because I'm able to share the gospel and
Mm-hmm.
I'm able to do things and spread joy and spread love and because before when I was not taking anxiety
Mm-hmm.
medication, I was in my bed and I wasn't doing the world any justice. I wasn't doing the world
Exactly.
anything. I
That's a
was
good
just
point because your anxiety was
yeah.
so debilitating
It was.
that
It was literally just yep, it sucked the life
yeah,
out of me.
yeah, it kept
So,
you from doing it
yeah.
and engaging in life.
Mhm.
It prevented you from spreading the gospel, being a
Yep.
light,
Mhm.
sharing, and now you're here sharing your testimony.
I know. Yeah, and it's truly amazing to even just be on the other side of it because something that my husband would continually tell me is, he would say, "I see you on the other side of this. I
Mm,
see you on the other side of this anxiety, this panic attack that you're having." But it for a while it really, it was tough. It would prevent me from doing a lot.
yeah,
Vacations, I would leave
yeah.
trips, I would leave work, I would
Wow.
whew, cancel plans all the time.
Yeah.
That was my norm.
And
But
so it clearly, again, went beyond having a little bit of anxiety
mhm,
that was manageable
yeah,
to this was infiltrating every
every
area of
aspect.
your life,
Yeah,
and you were having consistently negative outcomes because
yeah,
of it. Again, like I said earlier, it was debilitating.
yeah,
It
it
held you
was. Oh,
hostage.
it really did. I was landlocked to my bed.
Yeah.
Cannot move, cannot do anything, nothing. And so
Wow.
I'm just so thankful to be on the other side of it. And I hear in my head my husband saying, I see you on the other
Hmm.
side of this. So just being on the other side of it is a blessing. And, if there is anyone listening right now that
Hmm.
is dealing with this, like, I just hope that this can show them that there's another side to it.
Yeah.
That there is light at the end of the tunnel. And people will tell me that and I'm like, nope, I'm gonna deal with this my whole entire life. And that's what I thought. So
Hmm.
and now I'm on the other side of it
You're on the other
and
side and you're sharing
God is
and you're
good.
managing. Yeah,
Yeah.
amen. He is good.
Yeah.
And when I was preparing for this, I would begin wondering, and not wondering, but just, what does the Bible say about
Yeah.
anxiety?
Mhm.
What does the Bible say? Or because there's certain things the Bible doesn't maybe speak specifically on that we
Yeah.
can kind of gather clues from different scriptures about
Yeah, for
whatever. But
sure.
then there's certain things that the Bible does speak on.
Mhm.
And so sometimes I can be a little word nerd
Mhm.
sometimes.
I
Um,
love it though. I love it.
and so I began looking, I'm like, I wonder what the Greek word for anxiety is.
Okay. What is it?
Yeah, you want to hear about what
Tell
it
me
means?
about it.
Okay,
I'm
girl.
like,
Okay.
I don't know
All
this.
right.
Tell me.
The Greek word for anxiety is mirimnao. Mirimnao.
Okay.
Merimnao. Mirimnao. So I might not
Mhm.
be pronouncing that correctly,
That's okay.
but it appears in the New Testament about 17 times.
Mm.
And this is what got me, that it's made up of a compound word
Okay.
called merizo, Merizo, which means to be distracted, to separate, to divide.
Oh, okay.
And the other compound word is mind. And that Greek word is nous, Nous.
Okay.
So it's to be distracted, separated, and divided in your mind.
Oh my gosh.
Isn't that what we've been talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, but
That is
it
crazy.
gets better. It gets better. So it basically means like worry about regarding the basic essentials of life, being troubled,
Mm.
fretful, being pulled in opposite directions.
Yes. The divide.
The divide.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know if you've noticed this with some words in the Bible, it can be one word meaning two different things
Yeah.
depending on the context
Yep.
that you use
Yeah,
it. And
yeah,
so
for
the
sure.
same word, miram now, is also, you like how I try to roll that off my
I know.
tongue?
Hey, you
Miram
just say it with
now.
confidence and
Yes.
we'll believe you.
That it also means caring or providing for and
Huh.
having careful thought. So it also means concern.
Okay.
So I'm like, okay, God, so there is a difference between having concern
Mhm.
and concern for others or a careful thought
Yeah.
and being worried and distracted to the point of being
Yep.
divided in your
Yeah.
mind and your thoughts.
Yes. That's
And so,
good.
isn't it? I
That's
thought that
good.
was good too. I was like, I'm gonna have to share this with
Yes,
Kelsey.
because it's almost like your mind is thinking one thing, but it's also thinking another. It's
Yeah,
like,
it's like it's
I know
being
this is irrational, but I can't get this thought out of my head.
exactly.
Yeah. So the divide. Yeah.
It's got you divided.
Yep.
Like you want to stay in the coffee shop,
Yes.
but your
That's exactly what I was
mind
thinking
and
of.
your physical body is like, no, you need to go home and get
Yep.
into bed and be safe. But no, I want to
Exactly.
be here with my friends, but I'm
Exactly.
scared. I want to go home. I want to be safe.
Exactly.
You're pulled in
Oh
two
my
directions.
gosh.
So I'm like, okay, how is this used in the positive?
Yeah.
So in 1 Corinthians 12:25, Paul tells the church of Corinth to have concern with each other.
Okay.
So it says in verse 25, so that there should be no division in the body, talking about the body of Christ,
Yep.
but that its parts should have equal concern, or that merimnao,
Mm-hmm.
that same word that
Yeah.
means divided here means concern, to have
Okay.
concern for each other. So that was in the
Huh.
positive. The other positive
Yeah.
was in Philippians 2:19 and 20,
Okay.
where Paul sends Timothy to encourage the Philippians. And he says, I hope in the Lord Jesus to send Timothy to you soon, that I also may be cheered when I receive news about you. I have no one else like him, like Timothy,
Mm-hmm.
who will show genuine concern, merimnao,
Yep.
for your welfare.
Huh.
So again, there is the positive. Now, then the negative, and I think this is an example of being pulled in different
Yep.
directions.
Let's hear it.
So, like, we have to have concern for others,
Yeah.
right? That's not
Yeah.
negative. That's
Yep.
a positive thing.
Yeah.
But when we're pulled in directions, we're in trouble with fretted. So Luke 10, I know when I tell this story, you'll the scripture, you'll know it. Luke 10:41-42, when Jesus visits Martha and Mary.
Mm-hmm.
But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all
That
these
was me.
details.
That was me.
Pulled in different directions.
Yes.
There is only one thing worth being concerned about. So again, you're getting pulled in this directions,
Yep.
but there's only one thing to be concerned about.
Mm.
Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her.
Yep.
So Martha was so distracted and pulled.
Yes.
Again, not that what she was doing was wrong,
Yeah.
but she was focusing on
Yes.
the details that weren't as important, overly focused
Yep.
on these details.
She was anxious.
She was anxious.
She was anxious.
She was anxious. And,
And
so
Mary was chilling.
Mary was chilling at the feet of Jesus.
She really
wasn't being
was.
pulled between the kitchen
Yep.
and at the feet of Jesus. She
Yep.
chose
Yes.
which
Said,
one
I'm
she
gonna
was
stay
going to focus.
here.
I'm going to stay here.
Yes. Oh my
Isn't that-
gosh.
And so I'm not going to, we'll see. So Philippians 4:6-7 says, don't be worried about anything.
Mhm.
Again, Miriam
Yep.
now. Instead,
Mm.
pray about everything. Tell
Yeah.
God what you need and thank him. So, then you'll
Yeah.
get the peace that surpasses all understanding.
Yep.
And then verse 8, fix your thoughts. Again,
Mm.
don't have your thoughts pulled.
Yeah.
Fix your thoughts.
Yep.
And then he gives us this list of things that are true, honorable, right, pure,
Yeah.
lovely. I was like, God, this is good.
Yes, it is.
Isn't it good?
Yes.
And it just made me think of our conversation about the difference between how the Bible takes the one word
Mhm.
to mean two different things, but very
Yep.
closely related,
Yep.
but very different.
Yeah. It's wild.
It's wild. And so Matthew 10:18-20, this is just good. This is when Jesus gives his instructions to his 12 disciples.
I can't wait to hear it.
He says, you will stand trial. So again, you're going to have some
Yep.
issues. You will stand trial before governors and kings because you are my followers. But this will be your opportunity to tell the rulers and other believers about me. When you are arrested, not if you are arrested, but when you are arrested, don't worry. Miriam now.
Yep.
Don't worry about how to respond or what to say. God will give you the right words at the right time, for it is not you who will be speaking. It will be the Spirit of your Father through you.
Ooh,
So again,
that's so good.
the Bible, it does speak on
Yeah.
worry
Yep.
and concern.
Yeah.
And it does tell us that there is a concern that's healthy,
Mm-hmm.
but then it can spill over into unhealthy worry that's
Yeah.
got us distracted.
Yes, and
and
consuming
distraught and
us.
consumed.
Yes.
And when we're consumed about those things, we're missing
Yeah.
the important thing that we should be focusing on.
Yep.
And this is the last one. In Matthew 6:25, Jesus warns his disciples against worry. But I found this one interesting. So again,
Okay.
it's went a little nerdy.
Okay.
So first I'm going
I
to
love
start
it.
with the verse 24, and I think this will be familiar,
Okay.
where he's teaching his disciples on many different things.
Okay.
And he's saying, no one can serve two masters, for he will hate the one and love the other. That one sound familiar to you?
Yep.
He will cling to one, he will despise the other. You're not able to serve God and mammon, which is materialism. Then verse 25 starts off with either therefore or that is why. So it's connecting the two scriptures.
Yeah.
So it's telling you we can't serve God and materialism. Then verse 25 is that is why I tell you, do not worry.
Yes.
I've never ever connected those two scriptures
Yeah. In
together
that way.
in that way. But because of that transition
My
of verse
gosh.
25, it says, therefore, that means
Yeah.
based on what was just previously said
Yes.
in verse 24,
Yep.
therefore, that is why I tell you, do not worry, Miriam now, about everyday life.
That's my new favorite
Whether
word.
you have, I know, I'm gonna get a t-shirt.
I know, right?
Now. Whether you have enough,
Anxiety.
yeah, right? Don't worry whether you have enough clothes to wear. Isn't life more than food and your body more than clothing?
Yeah.
So the connection with the two, and I did some research, so I didn't come up with all this on my own, trust me, but it made sense. I'm like, I never connected the two.
Yeah.
So when we worry and become anxious to the point of it being debilitating, it's like we're serving two masters.
Yes. Yep.
And we're created to serve one.
My gosh.
Right? We're created to serve one.
That's good.
And so when we have these other things, materialism, anxiety, worry, no, it says don't worry about those things.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that your anxiety is going to go away because you read this scripture.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
But I think the scriptures can give us context.
Yes.
Right?
Definitely.
It can give us the truth to come out when we're having those anxious thoughts.
Yeah.
To begin to use the word of God.
Yeah.
To counter the lies that the enemy tries to send us through our thoughts. To get us to buy into the lie of, oh, people are going to think this about me. Or I'm not a strong Christian if I do this, I'm not going to be safe. Or if I struggle with my identity because of the anxiety.
Yep.
I just thought that was so good. I was like, oh, I can't wait till I share that with
I love
Kelsea,
that.
right?
I love that.
Right?
That's
so
incredible.
God does speak on this.
Yeah,
right?
definitely.
He speaks on it. And I like how you said that you felt that God worked through the medication. Again, God gives people the gift of, being a doctor or the medical profession or the therapy profession.
Yeah.
Right? People, those are gifts and talents.
Resources, exactly.
Right. Resources, right. So what do you think has been the most challenging part of managing the anxiety? And if there was a most challenging part, how did you work through that, or how do you work through it?
I would say kind of what I touched on before was how it affected my relationship with Angel, my now husband. I don't know if I said that before. But his name is Angel, and it's how I had a relationship with Angel. It was rooted in like control and stuff, and I wanted to control things, and if something wasn't in my control or whatever it was, that's when my anxiety would flare up and panic attacks and stuff like that. But I would say how the difficulties were how it affected my relationship with him. We would go to weddings, or there was one wedding in particular that we went to, and he was in the wedding, and I walked in and walked right back out, and just missing one of the most important days in our friend's life. And then there were vacations that, that I had to miss out on, which, is a first world problem. I'm definitely can recognize that. But in a relational aspect, it really did. It hurt me to know that I was hurting someone else because I was hurting. So again, kind of what we touched on, that vicious cycle of, oh my gosh, I don't want to tell him how bad I'm doing or any of my friends or any of like my family members, because they're going to know, that this is really bad. And then they're going to be upset, and they're going to worry. And so I didn't want people to worry. But kind of how we talked about earlier was just how I struggled with letting people down. I didn't want to let people down. So knowing that I was almost letting people down because I was feeling so horrible, it was hard, and it was a little bit lonely. But I knew that, Angel was there for me. I knew that my parents were there for me. My sister was there for me.
Okay.
I had friends that were there for me. It's just I had to reach out. I
So
had
you,
to
yeah.
humble myself and say, "You know what?
Okay.
I
Okay.
need help.
Okay.
I'm not okay, so I need help."
So you had a support system.
Yes, I did, and I'm so forever thankful for them, seriously.
Okay. And so it sounds
Yeah.
like with having the support system, you had to take it a step further
Mhm.
and to allow yourself to utilize
Yeah.
your support system to
Yeah.
humble
Yep.
yourself.
And it was almost like I knew that they were there,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't wanna let them down. So, I was like, "Do I hold on to this information and, how bad I'm doing and how I'm having, 5 panic attacks a day
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
like, all these things, or do I be honest and maybe they
Right.
can help me in some way?"
Right.
And they wound up
Yeah.
helping me and, you
That's
know,
awesome.
like, helping me with mechanisms
Yeah.
of dealing with anxiety and stuff like that, and the physical aspects of anxiety and
Okay.
stuff like that. So yeah, I would say those were the difficulties, is how it affected my relationships, but ultimately it brought me closer to each and every one of those people that I just listed because
Okay.
I was open and honest. I had to get
Okay.
open and honest and say, "Hey, I'm really not doing too hot. Just had a panic attack, but
Okay.
I'm okay now."
So
Okay.
you had to allow yourself to be transparent with
Yeah, I did.
your
Yeah.
support
And that
system.
was hard because I didn't want to let anyone down.
And
I
you know
didn't.
what? I've heard a lot of that seemed to be a common theme in
Hmm.
addition to, like you said, some of the physical symptoms that you
Yeah.
had with the anxiety, and some of the thoughts around control and safety. But
Yes.
it seems like I heard throughout this interview
Hmm.
so far is a lot of not wanting to let other people down, like this
Yeah.
expectation that you have of
Yes.
yourself
Yeah.
to please this person, and
Yeah.
which that can contribute to your anxious thoughts too. So, like you
Yes.
said before, it becomes a vicious
Definitely. Yep. It was a cycle.
cycle.
Yeah. And it definitely did. It definitely did definitely attack, my thoughts and stuff. Like, oh, if I let
Hmm.
people down, then what are they gonna think of me? What
So,
are they
how did you
gonna
break that cycle to let yourself say, "I'm going
um
to reach out and accept this help that they
yeah.
are graciously giving
It
me"?
was hard. And I
Okay.
still struggle with,
Okay.
I still struggle with, oh my gosh, like if I let, my best friend know or my
Hmm.
husband know that I'm really not having a good day mentally, like I don't want to upset them. I don't want them to worry about me. So it definitely still is something that I'm dealing with.
Okay.
Just like the worry of letting people down.
Uh huh.
But I have understood and, confided in certain people like, hey, this is a worry that I have that I'm gonna let you down or that I'm gonna make you worry about me or,
Okay.
you know, if I am open and honest with how I'm feeling and, I'm not deserving of, like, this
Mm.
love and this care that you're giving me, but and it's been healing to hear from those people like my husband or like my best
Okay.
friend and, hearing from them, I love you no matter what. Like
Mm.
we're gonna get through these
Okay.
hard days just as much as we're gonna get through these good
Okay.
days. So again, vulnerability,
Mhm.
being vulnerable, knowing that the support system that I have is here for me because I would do the same for them. So why
Got you.
wouldn't they do the same for me? So that's
Right.
kind of how
Yeah.
I almost tricked myself into thinking like if they were going through this,
That you would be
would
there
I
for
help
them.
them?
Yeah.
Yeah, of course I would. And
Yeah.
so I'm like, "Oh, that's how they feel about me."
So it's
So,
almost like you also, in addition to, like I said, being humble
mhm.
and being transparent and saying and being honest,
Mhm.
it sounds like it also boils down to trust. Like you had to trust that your
Yeah.
family and your circle
Yes.
of friends and your husband, that they love you
Yeah. I
and they
did.
love you
Yeah.
no matter what.
Yes.
They love you unconditionally.
Yes,
They
exactly.
love you unconditionally.
Yep.
And so,
And that was hard for me to understand, and that
yeah.
also kinda transcended and into how or transitioned into what's the word I'm looking for? Yeah, something like that.
Mhm.
It went into how I viewed the Lord loving me and how God
Mm.
loves me, and God, I don't deserve to be loved like this, but
Mhm.
understanding that God does love us
So
so
did you struggle
unconditionally.
sometimes in your
Yes.
relationship with the
Yeah,
Lord
with the
as
Lord
you
I
were
did. I did.
talk a little bit about that? Because
Yeah.
again, I think as believers, some not all believers, some
Mhm.
try to paint this picture like every day is a walk with Jesus in the park and I'm on cloud nine every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, I
Uh,
definitely was not on cloud 9.
every day. Yeah.
I was not
Yeah.
on cloud 9.
Yeah.
So I struggled to trust God. I struggled to
Okay.
believe what he was saying, and I told God, I said, "Lord, I'm struggling to trust you. First of all, I'm dealing with anxiety that is just making me bedridden
Mhm.
ridden. It's making
Mhm.
me just shackling me
Right.
to my home." And so I oftentimes I thought that, I had to be almost like I had to sugarcoat it to God. Like,
Mm.
oh, God, I'm just having a bad day. Like, no, God wants you to, like, God knows how you're feeling and he wants you to tell him. Like,
Uh-huh.
I didn't understand that God wanted me to tell him, like, that I was struggling to trust
Right.
him.
Right.
And once I told him, like, God, I'm struggling to trust you because why am I dealing with this when I've prayed so hard, when I've done X, Y, and Z? Why
Mm-hmm.
am I still struggling with this? And so when I really got honest with the Lord and said, God, I am really struggling to trust you, that was, excuse me, that was a turning point for me.
Mm.
And
Okay.
it really was a turning point for my relationship with the Lord and just how I understood his love for me
Yeah.
and that it was unconditional and that I didn't have to do anything to gain his
Exactly.
love. I didn't have
Exactly.
to, it wasn't about what I'm doing. It wasn't about what I was, um, how many times a week I was serving. It
Right.
was just me. Like, God, you love me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it. Like, that's
Yeah.
just the beauty of the gospel, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Just
we are
accepting that
sinners.
unmerited
Yeah,
favor of God.
exactly. Like, it's the
Yeah.
grace that he gives us. And I had to understand that. So I feel
Yeah.
like once I got open and honest with not only people around me, but the Lord, I got open and honest with him. And he was just like, okay, like,
Yeah.
thank you for it was
Yeah.
almost like a fatherly, like, "Thanks for telling me,
Because he
I
knows
know that."
anyway, right? But it's really
Exactly.
us.
Mhm.
It helps to humble us
Yes.
to admit I
Exactly.
don't have it all together.
Mhm.
Even though I might act like it in front of people or
Yeah.
friends, but
Exactly.
behind closed doors, I have to get real
Yeah.
with myself because,
Yeah.
again, I think that helps with that spirit of
Yeah.
humility
Yes.
where we can't do it alone. We're not expected to do it.
Exactly.
And we're not, our salvation is not a performance driven
Exactly. And
thing.
that's and
Yeah.
so it broke roots of that,
Yeah.
getting honest with God and getting honest with my family and my friends and all of that. It dug deep into the roots of why are we feeling like this? Why are we
Hmm.
feeling like you don't deserve love? Why are you feeling
Right.
like, God isn't trustworthy, So I
Right.
really had to dig deep and see why I was feeling that way
And
to
digging,
understand,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
you're good.
And digging deep, that's where the hard work
Oh
is,
yeah.
right?
That's where the
Because
dirt is.
yeah, because again, it's we are to pray. We're supposed to
Mhm.
pray. And in prayer and in getting help, getting medication, it gets us to the point where we can
Yeah.
manage our anxious thoughts, manage anxiety to be able
Mhm.
to dig a little deeper
Yep.
to say, where did this come from?
Exactly.
Was it
Yeah.
situational? Was it
Yeah.
environmental? Was this related to some past trauma? So
Yeah.
that now we can begin to unearth
Mhm.
the roots of the anxiety, the anxious thoughts. If it was
Yeah.
situational, then get at the roots, working with a therapist or a
Mhm.
psychologist or your psychiatrist, and working at what is the root of this that's, that triggered this
Yeah.
anxiety, this event,
Exactly.
this situation.
Yeah.
And that takes hard work because a lot of times we go through life not wanting to address those
Mhm.
things, or sometimes people self medicate,
Yeah.
whether that's with alcohol, drugs, food, sex, exercising,
Yeah.
overeating, undereating. But eventually our bodies, kind of like you, get to the point where I
Yeah.
can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't. It's like a
And your
trunk.
body's gonna tell you.
Yeah, our bodies are going to tell us, right? It's like
Yeah.
a trunk that you might have at the end of your bed that you put
Mhm.
blankets in.
Mhm.
That blanket is only designed to hold, that trunk is only designed to hold so many blankets.
Yeah.
If it's designed to hold 10 and you try to put 15 in there,
They're not
you're
going
not
in.
closing the lid on that trunk.
Yep.
It's
It's
going to
gonna.
come
Yep.
out. It's going to
It's
spill out.
exactly.
And that sounds like what was happening to you. You
Yeah.
were trying on your own and you were doing the best that you could
Yeah. I
with what you
was
had.
exactly.
And I think that's where we want
Yep.
people to show themselves some grace and forgiveness, going, you
Yeah.
know what? If I did use drugs or alcohol or sex to
Yeah.
self medicate or to avoid,
Mhm.
no, that wasn't the most healthiest thing, but God is here.
Yes. Oh
And
my
God is
gosh.
able to, give forgiveness and
Yeah.
to offer. All we have to do is accept it,
Yeah.
right?
And that's where I struggled
Yeah.
because I had a past.
Yeah.
I had a past that I was dealing with shame and guilt of, but God was like, "You know what? Like, you're my child and I
Yeah.
love you." And I was
Yeah.
like, "But why? Why me? Why do you love me?"
Right. Yeah.
So, understanding that really just
Yeah.
changed something.
Yeah. Because the enemy would have us to sit in that
Yeah.
shame
Yeah.
and guilt
For
and
sure.
marinate in it for
Yep.
years and years and years, forever.
Yeah.
But that's not
It's
God's
not.
way.
Nope, it's
That's
not.
not his way. So I'm
Yeah.
so excited that you were able to finally get to a point where even though you had to kind of come to the end of yourself,
Yeah.
to say, hey, God, this is what I'm struggling with.
Yeah.
And he put people in your life, professionals in your life,
Yeah.
to help you to walk the journey toward where we are today and whatever's to come.
Yep. And I'm so thankful.
In the future. And I know
so thankful.
In addition to, I know we talked briefly before, because I'm also a practical person. Like I like to give people like tools, and everybody's path is different. So the same tools that work for you might not work for someone else.
Very true.
But it gives us some ideas.
Yeah.
So I know you said you prayed, and that's, I won't say that's a tool, because that's a discipline as believers.
Yeah.
That's a discipline,
I would say
a spiritual discipline that we're to have.
Yep.
So you prayed, and then you sought counseling.
Yes.
You sought medication management.
Yep.
What are some other tools that you use in addition to the medication management?
I would say just two that stick out to me immediately is one, breathing. So me as well, I'm very practical. I'm also very scientific. I love science. And so I like to know the reason behind things. So people will tell me, you got to breathe. You know, you're having a panic attack, just breathe. And I'm like, okay, you obviously know nothing. Like I am breathing, you know?
Right.
So very stubborn. But I learned about box breathing, which is, I think it's like 4 seconds in through your nose. You hold it for 4 seconds, out for 4 seconds, hold. And then so it's basically like you're breathing in, holding it, breathing out, holding it. And then so it's 4 seconds each way. So it goes to a box. I'm sure people can look it up. It's literally like, so it's popular. But so I had to know the reason why. So I'm a why person as well. I'm like, why? Tell me why. Something's going to work. Tell me why.
Exactly.
So I learned about the vagus nerve, which is basically when you start box breathing, it's going to trigger something that I think it's like in the back of your neck or something. And it's called the vagus nerve. And when this vagus nerve is triggered or stimulated, it's basically going to send like a signal to your whole body, like all of your nerves, all of your like your mind, all of it, your cortisol levels, all of it. And it's going to say, chill out, like chill out. We're good. Like I promise we're good. And so I learned that scientifically, if I start breathing like this has to happen. My body has to chill out. So I finally did it, and it literally worked wonders. Like, I mean, I would do it for like 5 minutes or something, or maybe not 5 minutes, but
until
I felt like some
better.
sort of like,
relief or something.
I'm okay. Yeah, I am safe. And so that's one thing that really worked for me, because like I said, I'm a why person, you know. It wasn't just like people saying just breathe, you know. Like I needed to know the reason and the science behind it. And another thing was that helped with like my physical anxiety symptoms was I think we talked about it, grounding. Did we talk about that?
Like grounding
Yeah.
techniques,
So and actually it's what my husband introduced to me. He is such a sweetheart, and I was having a panic attack one day, and it was a couple years ago, and he came up behind me and just wrapped his arms around me, and he started going through this kind of prompt, and he said, Kelsey, I want you to name 5 things that you can see. And then I would name 5 things. I'm like, what's going on? And he said 4 things that you can feel, 3 things that you can smell, or something like that. 2 things that you can touch, 1 thing you can taste. Something like that would kind of help your senses and like your physical state align with your mental state.
Keeps you in the here and now.
Exactly what I'm trying to say. Thank you. And so, yeah, so he did that, and I was like, wait, that made me feel so much better. I was like, where did you learn that? And he's like, oh, I was looking it up. Like, I was looking up how to help. And I'm like, oh. Super sweet. But that really helped me. So shout out to him for doing his research. Another thing, do your research. Like if there's something that you're experiencing, I feel like it can be a little bit tricky, because you never want to go into like WebMD or something and like diagnose yourself. But you know, for tools and stuff, I definitely encourage people to do their research to see what works. Because there were so many things that people told me to work, or that would work. You know, sour candy or ice in your hand, or you know, all of that, and none of it worked. But another thing was going for walks. So I had to get out of my physical temporary state of like wherever I was having a panic attack, I had to leave. So I would go outside. I would go for a walk down the street. I
Okay.
would go for a walk around the block. Anywhere I was, you can
Okay.
always walk. So get some fresh air, get out of your head by getting out of your physical,
Yeah.
the location of where
Right.
you're struggling.
Right.
Um, and that really, really helps me. So,
And
and
there
yeah.
was one that we talked about. Was it the three
Oh, the 3
C's?
C's, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know this yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna say it right, but it was
Okay.
basically the 3 C's, and it was catch, check, change. So you would catch your anxious thought.
Mm-hmm.
So you would literally like close your eyes, picture catching your anxious thought and grabbing it. And number 2 would be checking it. So you would have the sentence in front of you, like maybe
Mm-hmm.
write it down, and you would say, okay. So let's say my anxious thought is that D hates me. Oh my gosh, D hates me. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be my anxious thought. So I would catch it, I would check it. Well, is there any evidence that D
Mm-hmm.
hates me? Is there any evidence that she is upset with me? And then I would change it. I would say, okay, no, there's no evidence
Mm-hmm.
that D hates me. She's loving, she's kind, she's caring, she's such a
Mm-hmm.
good host.
Mm-hmm.
and
Uh-huh.
and then you change it. D actually doesn't hate me. D loves me. And so that was something that really helped me. So it was catch, check, change, and that would help with the intrusive thoughts that I was having.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I would catch them, check them, and just change them into something positive. Look for evidence, because a lot of times anxiety will lie to you.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the coffee shop, or
Mm-hmm.
you know something different. So really looking at which goes along biblically, it's like take your thoughts captive.
Captive.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all
Yeah.
these like things that kind of like society gives us, it's like I'm like, wait, that's
They're
in the
based in the
Bible.
word,
I'm like,
right?
that's incredible.
Right.
It works
Yeah.
because it's biblical, and I
Yeah.
love it.
So yeah, so the Bible was
So
doing
yes.
cognitive therapy for before the psychologists
Yes.
were doing it,
Yep.
because that's what you were describing is the
Mm-hmm.
ABCs of like cognitive therapy
Yes.
or restructuring our
Yes.
thoughts. Because
Mm-hmm.
what will happen is our actions don't just come from nowhere. Our
Yeah.
actions are based on
Our thoughts
our
and
thoughts the
yeah.
thoughts that we believe,
Yeah.
that we buy into,
Mm-hmm.
and then
Definitely.
our feelings, and then our actions are going to proceed. And so a
Mm-hmm.
lot of times people want to just jump ahead and try to change a behavior without
Yeah.
checking and changing their
Yep.
thought life. And so
Exactly.
we have to remember, at the root of the anxiety, again, when it's out of the norm, you've got this anxiety and worry that's not proportionate
Yeah.
to what's going on.
Exactly.
Now, if we're sitting in a coffee shop, for example, and we hear gunshots,
Yeah, that
then
would be
we don't want you to
valid.
sit there going, I'm
Yes.
taking that thought captive.
Yeah, no.
I am safe. No, you're not.
We're running.
Exactly. We're
See
running.
ya.
I'm going to be right behind you. I might
Yep.
knock you over. No, I won't knock you over. I'll
You
grab your
would.
hand. No. Right? Because
It's true though.
that's, that's not disproportionate. No, that's
Yes.
a real threat. And we want to
Exactly.
respond accordingly.
Yeah. Exactly. Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
But when we have something you're having that thought, but there's nothing to weigh in on that as
Yeah.
that thought being true,
Exactly.
then that's where we don't want to let that thought
So
continue
evidence.
to resonate. Exactly.
Yeah, there's no evidence of it, Or
Exactly.
maybe there is. But
Exactly.
yeah, so checking yourself is
Exactly.
huge.
Because
and
our
I love what you
feelings are
said.
not always factual, and our
Yeah.
feelings are not always indicative of what's really going on.
Yeah.
Because I feel a thing doesn't make it
Exactly.
thing.
Yeah, it doesn't mean it's right.
It doesn't mean it's
Because
right.
I was having all these anxious thoughts, and I'm like, oh yeah, gotta be right. Nope, they were not right.
Yeah.
I was safe. I was good.
Yeah.
I was in the Lord's hands. I was
Exactly.
right there, safe and sound.
Any other last thoughts that you want to leave people, or any last words of wisdom or advice for those that are struggling with anxiety and they're maybe on the fence about, do I go to a doctor to see if it is anxiety to the point that's a diagnosis, or is it just typical anxiety that it's nothing to worry about?
Yeah.
Like, any thoughts?
Yeah, I would say either way. Like, if you have those questions, either way, going to a therapist is going to help. Going to a counselor is going to help. And oftentimes schools, like I know Salisbury SU, they have resources. And, you'd be surprised how many resources there are for people. So I just want to encourage people that, there's another side to it. There is another side to their anxiety, and there's another side to maybe their depression or whatever mental illness that they're experiencing. There can be another side if you take steps.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is just one day at a time. And if one day at a time is too much, then it's 1 hour at a time. And if 1 hour is too much, then you take one moment at a time, because there
Exactly.
is always something on the other side.
Mm.
And so I hope and pray that people would know that it is okay to receive help, to
Mhm.
know that maybe even like going to a church community, like, we have resources here in
Yeah.
Emmanuel that can kind of help those things. And so I'm so grateful to be here, and I'm just blessed to be on the
Mhm.
other side of it, to help people know that
Mhm.
there's another side of it.
And
So,
we always, I know, at the end of this podcast, in the narrative portion,
mhm.
include resources, and so I'll talk
Yes,
about those at
for
the end.
sure. That would be great.
Um, but I one of the things that I would like to leave people with are just some maybe questions more
Mhm.
so.
Yeah.
And one, you know, are they worried about something that's not in their control?
Yeah.
Like I would want them to, am I worried about things that are not in my control?
Yeah.
Am I worrying about things that there is no evidence to support
Yeah.
the worry? Is it now going beyond typical worry or
Mhm.
concern to now it's infiltrating every area of my life? I
Yeah.
would encourage people to just delve into that for themselves to kind of
Yeah.
see, how is this
Yeah.
impacting my
Yeah.
life? Whether that's speaking to a trusted friend, speaking to a
Yes.
family member,
Yep.
and I would ask them, are they concerned about the needs of others? Because again, concern that we read in some of the
Yeah.
scriptures is okay.
Yep.
Concern for others, and
Yeah.
as believers, we're supposed to have concern and
For
welfare
sure.
of
Yeah.
each other. But when does it spill over into this
Yes.
unhealthy
Yep.
worry
Yes.
that has us divided and has
Yeah.
our minds going in opposite directions?
Yeah.
And that it's okay to maybe start with your
Yeah.
primary care physician, your
Yep.
PCP. It's
It
okay to
is.
start with them.
It
Get
is.
a physical exam to
Yeah.
rule out something medical, because sometimes
Definitely.
medical conditions
Yes.
might mimic
That's another
anxiety.
thing.
Yeah, it
Yep.
could be. So you want to
Exactly.
rule those things out. So I would
Yeah.
encourage, that's what I would want to leave with people, to
Yeah. I love
take
that.
that next step. Like I said, it
Yeah.
might not be a therapist, it might not be a
Yep.
psychiatrist, but maybe it's your primary.
Yeah.
And for
And
some
talk to
people,
them,
exactly,
like they
exactly. And
they'll
for
give you
some
some
people,
stuff.
it doesn't progress to a psychiatrist. But
Yeah.
again, everybody's path is different.
Mhm.
But whatever path they take, we just want them to know that God is with them
Yes.
and God's not judging them.
Yeah.
Um, and
That's
one of the things I would tell my
powerful.
clients is to do, if you're in therapy or you're presenting with your primary care physician, do a timeline of your symptoms. When did
Yep.
this start?
That's
How
good.
far back? What was going on?
Yeah.
Was there a specific event, specific situation that my anxiety began to maybe get worse or begin to come up on it to manifest itself?
Yeah.
Did I have a change in my medications?
Yep.
Did I have a change in my diet?
Yeah.
Was there a life event that happened? Did I
All
experience
valid
a life?
things.
All those things. Create a timeline. So when you go to a therapist or go to a primary, you've done some of your
Yes.
homework, so to
Yep.
say. Or it could be something that you do with your therapist that you have,
Mhm.
because once you do your grounding techniques and your safe place things, that you still have to kind of get at the root of
Yeah.
whatever that situational thing was or event or
Yep.
whatever it might be that triggered the anxiety, so that you can begin to unearth anything else that's there.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's what I would want to leave. But I'm just so
Yeah.
glad that you joined us on today.
Oh, I'm so thankful to be here. Truly am so thankful
Yeah.
to be here. It's an honor to hopefully just help one person know
Yeah.
that they're not alone,
Well,
and that just reach out to
yeah.
people.
Don't be ashamed. Right.
Exactly. Don't be ashamed, and there's people who want to walk with you. So,
Well, thank you
yeah.
so much,
Thank
Kelsey.
you for having me. I am so happy to be
Well,
here.
thank you.
Yeah.
So we were just so excited that you tuned in with us again. And so if something was said, something was discussed here that you just feel like you need to talk to someone, again, don't feel any shame with reaching out to your primary care physician, reaching out to your family or a circle of family and friends, reaching out to a therapist or a psychiatrist or psychologist. There's going to be some links in the bio of the at the end of this. I don't even know what you call it.
In the caption.
And the caption,
Yeah.
in the caption, we'll put resources. So again, you don't have to suffer alone. You don't have to suffer in silence. look for some of those resources in the captions. Again, if you want to hear about certain topics in the future, put it in the chat and we'll see what we can do. But again, thank you so much for joining us.